Do not adjust your digital device. What you are about to see and hear may shock and appall you. Join our hosts as they encounter countless thrills, spills, chills, and hilarity as they explore the very weirdest in pop culture. The following media is so strange, so beyond the scope of what is normal, it will make you ask the question, why does this exist? Hello everybody and welcome to another episode of Why Does This Exist? I'm Chris.
And I'm Rob.
And today we interrupt our originally scheduled programming to talk about stoner / doom metal. So you guys are going to enjoy this. I think more stoner metal we're going to talk about than doom, but they kind of go hand in hand. Anyway, we're going to talk about that stuff. It's going to be fun, and that's about it. If you don't know what we are Why Does This Exist? We're a podcast that talks about the very weirdest in pop culture, whether it's a music genre like we're about to do, just some random philosophical conversation like we just did the previous episode on AI artwork, and really anything in between. So whatever it is, we'll discuss it at some point in time. I would like to say I told you this before. I told you this before when we signed on that I saw Meshuggah the other day, and I liked their music I liked their music for a while, but I had never gotten really like super into them. We're gonna try not to say the likes too much. I'm sorry, folks, but I really enjoyed. I've always enjoyed their music. I've never been super duper into it, and just seeing them the other day. First of all, the openers were Cannibal Corpse and Carcass. So how much better can it possibly get? And then Meshuggah goes on. Their freaking light show blew me away. Their sound was perfect, and the venue was the theater at Madison Square Garden, which I believe they renovated the garden recently, and I think they put that theater venue in there, so it's a secondary venue inside of Madison Square Garden. So there's the main arena, and then there is the theater, which it's very nice, I have to say. But on top of that, the sound is pristine and it's direct in, and since everything is in B tuning or lower, and Meshuggah, well, why stop at 6 string guitars tuned as low as you could go? They're using 8 and 9 string guitars tuned as low as you could get. Jesus Christ. So I think the lights are rigged to the strobes. I think are rigged to the drummer Thomas Haka, and the the regular sensory lights or whatever are rigged to the guitar player, which his name escapes me right now. Oh gosh, why can't I get this? The guy who wears the hockey jerseys. What the hell is his damn name? Frederick Thornen. I'm just gonna look it up. I'm not gonna act like I know it. It's Frederick Thorndendahl. That's his name. Yeah. Right, that's him. He's not the other guy. Yes, that's him. Jesus freaking Christ. It is rigged to his guitar too, so you have everything going on in different areas. I felt like I was in a spaceship getting violated and abducted and thrown around by these aliens. It's basically, if you haven't listened to Meshuggah, it's like an alien took a guitar and just said, "Hey, you know what'd be cool?" and just started doing their thing.
Yeah.
It's freaking crazy. But the theater at MSG, this blew me away. The floor shakes.
Yeah.
So it you really feel like you're in a bubble and you're just getting thrown around. I mean, with the lights and everything, it's it's like you're the ball in a pinball game, and you're just
Yeah.
getting slapped around by everything. It's it's a life changing experience. You need to friggin' see these guys. Anyway, that's the news. Here's the weather. You are now about to witness the true strength of street knowledge from a ragtag group of rogues. So let's get on with the goddamn show. We're gonna be talking about the stoner doom metal today,
Mm.
which you could start us off on that. I've already talked about music to kick us off right now, but we are not doing a Suga episode, unfortunately. We will get to that at some point. For I'm sure I would
Yeah.
like to,
Yeah.
because they're ridiculous. Anyway,
Uh. Anyway, so stoner metal, stoner rock, or doom. They're all pretty much the same. They kind of came out of it. You have to really go back to the 60s for the origins of stoner metal with acid rock and the, early proto metal bands like Zeppelin and Cream and of course Black Sabbath. Uh Basically the genre is characterized by super heavy slow guitars, uh often kind of droning, and sometimes monotone vocals, not uh harsh vocals, usually, clean melodic vocals, but sometimes monotonous in tone because of the nature of the music. But again, evolved out of the acid rock genre in the 60s, which included bands. I mean, Black Sabbath's kind of thrown in. I wouldn't say Black Sabbath's acid rock, but they're really just the first metal band, and they kind of cross genres. They had doom songs, they had thrashier songs.
yeah, I would say that they were more a band that was on acid versus an acid rock band.
Yeah, I mean, the list of acid rock bands includes Sabbath, but it's very eclectic. Like, it goes from Sabbath to Grateful Dead to Hawkwind, Iron Butterfly. There's a lot of different bands on there that are kind of varying. Even Alice Cooper in his late 60s work is on that list. The Amboy Dukes. So it's a quite eclectic list, and acid rock, I think, is really hard to describe. I think you could probably say Jimi Hendrix Experience is probably made, or those late 60s like psychedelic rock bands are probably the closest, most accurate thing that you could say is acid rock.
Yeah, like
Um
something that isn't really structured, where they kind of go off on tangents and
yeah,
there's a lot more jamming going on.
yes,
I think is what you can kind of define.
yeah,
Well, I think that's kind of how you can differentiate acid rock between regular classic rock or what's considered classic rock.
yeah. I mean, and there's a lot of acid rock that is considered classic rock because that's just how it was. But stoner rock itself kind of
Right. I
evolved
mean,
in.
classic rock only really ever got the name classic rock after it had been around for 20 something years because people didn't know what to call it because there was whatever the modern rock was, and it was probably just down to radio stations or record labels trying to market the music after it had been around for a while.
Well, that's the other thing about stoner rock. It's kind of a retroactive genre because the genre itself, like most of the bands, predate the actual genre by like years or even decades. The term stoner rock actually came from a 1997 compilation album from Roadrunner that was called "Burn One Up: Music for Stoners." Uh,
Huh.
but most of the bands in the stoner doom stoner rock genre had been out since the 70s or the 80s, and I guess they just hadn't come up with a genre for them. For because again, a lot of the bands in the stoner doom, stoner rock category are very eclectic. There are bands that are more like heavy doom metal, like Sleep, for
Yeah,
example,
I mean,
and
this
Electric
is
Wizard.
to be honest, this genre is. I mean, I know every bit of metal and rock comes from the blues, but this is the closest to being more of a traditional blues band.
Yeah,
It's just that the sound is just so
blues with
distorted
heavy
and
distortion.
overdriven.
Yeah,
Yeah, what it is, it's really just very heavy blues.
yeah.
Because if you
Which was
just
basically Black Sabbath. That was how
right,
Sabbath originated. It
well,
was.
exact distortion off, it's really just a standard blues song in just B.
Hmm.
And even the tuning, most bands will be in B or C. They'll be tuning very low anyway,
Yeah.
just to kind of get that groove. They'll be playing those classic 60s
A
amp
Sabbath was tuned to
like
E flat.
orange. Well, they tuned down. They were originally E flat, and then they tuned down lower because for when Tony Iommi had the
No,
accident as it
well,
got
no,
more difficult
they
for
tuned down
him.
to E flat when he had the accident. That was when they originally tuned down.
Oh,
It was
right.
only a half a step.
That's right. They got lower later.
Yeah, and they might have tuned down for like certain songs, but in general they were in E flat. Or maybe even D sometimes, but mostly E flat.
Yeah,
Uh,
I know now they tune to C, but I guess it's one of those things
well,
where
it could be.
as
A lot of bands tune down as to help the vocalist be able to. It's easier for a vocalist to hit lower notes, so they'll tune because that's like what Metallica started tuning down because of that, because it helped James actually be able to sing and not have to hit the higher notes as much. So a lot of bands now tune down to just the older bands to help the singer, in which obviously Ozzy probably needs all the help he can get.
right, and I'm sure
So,
it's also easier for Tony to just to play when everything's that much lower.
mhm.
It comes with age, everyone. Don't get
Yeah.
old. Stay young as long as you can.
So yeah, so stoner rock came out of this doom metal movement and really didn't get called stoner rock until the 90s, even though they had been around for a while, and it became most of the bands were influenced by cannabis culture and often had songs that had to do with like weed or psychedelics. And even Sleep had one of their albums, the third studio album was Dope Smoker. And
What a great fucking album.
yeah, I mean,
They named that album twice. The
yes,
first it was
Jerusalem.
originally Jerusalem, right?
Hmm.
Because under Earache, and I really love the artwork for I really love the artwork for that of just that magic horse thing.
Yeah,
Um
that's another thing too, is that a lot of the album art for most stoner doom bands is that also actually like really intricate and you know, uh, I would say it fits the genre. Let's just say
yes.
that it's very psychedelic looking.
Yes, but anyway, Jerusalem was Dope Smoker was what it was what the recording originally was, and it's one 63-minute song. I believe
Hmm.
it's 63 minutes, and it's the build of just traveling through the desert in a caravan smoking weed. It's a very simple concept, everyone.
Yep.
And they gave it to Earache, and first of all, they blew the budget on their amps because they wanted custom amps. So they blew the budget on weed and amps, and they're these custom orange amps that they just called green, just to be one big like pot joke. And I think they spent 80. I think the budget was $80,000, and they spent it on amps and and they spent it on amps and weed, aka inspiration, and they just played and recorded this thing, and they gave them the big album, and Earache said, nobody is going to buy this. It's 63 minutes. You can't possibly do this. And they go record something else, and they said, okay, well, we're going to need more money. And they said, what do you mean? We gave you $80,000. Yeah,
Mhm.
we spent it already. Well, we're not going to get, you spent it already and you gave us this? Forget it. We're just going to figure out what to do with this damn thing now.
Yeah.
And so they chopped it up and they reordered it and they just put it out as is. And Jerusalem was Jerusalem was fine, but down the road, of course, as people found out what happened, they wanted the original thing. So it got released on its own eventually, and it's heralded as one of the greatest Doom albums of all time,
Yeah.
or stoner Doom, whatever you want to call it, and it's freaking hysterical.
I mean, modern Doom is largely there's a lot of overlap with stoner metal, stoner rock. It's pretty. Most of the bands that are considered Doom bands could also be considered stoner metal bands or stoner rock bands. Um, and in the 90s, the genre really kind of exploded. I think you had Caius originally. Uh, they started in 1987. Disbanded in 95, and most of the members actually went on to form like other influential bands in the genre. Queens of the Stone Age is considered a stoner rock band. Fu Manchu, such a huge influence from Caius that went on throughout the whole like the 90s. And Queens of the Stone Age became like a very popular like mainstream rock bands. But started off as basically a stoner metal band, and you can still hear the influence, or the stoner rock band rather, and you can still hear the influence of that doomy stoner metal in their albums as well. So the 90s is really when stoner metal really kind of exploded, and all these different bands started to get pop. And I think it kind of comes in waves, because there was also, I would say, in the around the time of the new wave of thrash metal, you kind of had a new wave of doom metal as well. And a lot of bands started playing that old school like stoner rock doom metal sound again. And you had bands like Blood Ceremony, Jex Thoth, who else? Person, although they were more psychedelic rock on the psychedelic rock side.
Mutoid Man is another
Yeah,
one.
yeah. Uh, Electric Wizard.
Orange
Although
Goblin.
they formed in '88, Electric Wizard.
Yeah. And Orange
Uh,
Goblin
oh,
has been around for quite a while too, but they really started earning their stripes, I guess you could say, or really just getting known around that time. Mastodon started
yeah.
getting more and more experimental as time went on, where now
Clutch.
I don't even know what you would call Mastodon. They're just awesome.
Yeah,
I would just say that
they're
I
probably more
could
prog metal, I would say.
they are more proggy. I guess they're more
But
experimental.
but again, the stoner genre is such a eclectic genre, because all of these bands can be also put into different genre categories. They all just kind of overarch with the stoner metal genre, because they all tend to like have more psychedelic influence in their sound, and I think that's
Right.
where that comes from.
I mean, at the end of the day, genres are kind of bullshit anyway, and the
They
music is
really are.
whatever somebody wants to play.
Exactly.
It's not their fault that somebody else put a label on it.
Yeah.
I feel like stoner doom is probably the most true to itself of all the metal genres, because they're not trying to do anything.
Oh,
They're not trying to be a type of metal. They're not trying to fit into
no.
any boxes. These are just people who are just jamming most of the
Yeah.
time, and then they they click really well, so they start writing the original songs, and then they put it out, and it is what it is.
And there's such a
But
variety of bands in the quote unquote genre, if you want to call it that. I mean, we're going to
right,
keep saying genre, but like you go anywhere from, like we said before, Queens of the Stone Age, pretty mainstream rock, to a band like Sun, or also known as Sun O for those who are uninitiated. Uh, you know, Queens of the Stone Age is doing these mainstream rock songs, and then you have Sun that you go to a Sun show and you're sitting there for 20 minutes listening to like one note. uh,
Right. And then you've got, and then you could go from Clutch, which is really just a very heavy blues band. I wouldn't even consider them psychedelic influenced. I would say that they were just more, I wouldn't say that they were Doom. I would say that they were just the heaviest blues band you could imagine. And
mhm,
then there's Corrosion of Conformity, who was borderline thrash at times.
yeah,
And
and
then,
punk.
yeah. And then you have freaking Cathedral, which is just probably Black Sabbath as far as it could go be taken.
It's the American Black Sabbath. A lot of people like to call it Cathedral.
Cathedral
Oh no, that's
British.
Pentagram. Pentagram is the American
Pentagram
Black
is
Sabbath.
American Black Sabbath.
Yeah.
Yes. Pentagram is probably that for sure. Cathedral, I think, takes Black Sabbath to whatever the pinnacle could possibly be.
Yeah.
Where because they incorporate all the they incorporate all the keywords and all these crazy layers and everything. Honestly, Cathedral is probably my favorite of all
Hmm.
of the doom metal bands, just because of how layered the music is. It takes you on a journey, and also the artwork is so strange that it's one of those things where you look at it and part of you is a little disturbed, but you're also thinking, I have to know what this is. And then there's Bong Ripper, which
Yep.
takes you on a complete journey for the entire time. Satan Worshipping Doom is I got to see them play it in its entirety, and wow. That's probably the last band that blew me away like that since
Hmm.
before Meshuggah
Yeah.
was seeing Bong Ripper. What a just when they started playing that, honestly, Satan Worshipping Doom is an album that does not get spoken about enough.
Yeah.
It really takes you on a journey. The best way to listen to that album is basically the gall um, way of listen. Is you have to just keep pouring yourself a bottle of the reddest wine you can get, something like Juggernaut,
Hmm.
and sit in your sit in your home in complete darkness and listen to it on vinyl
Yeah.
as loud as you can go before the neighbors complain. It's you will have a hell of a fucking experience.
Yeah.
That's probably my favorite album to listen to, and that's the best. That's my favorite way to listen to. That's the best experience that I've ever had listening to an album is just listening to Satan worshiping Doom in complete darkness, drinking red wine. It's
Hmm.
it's crazy. Um, Unfortunately, I don't get to do that very often. In fact, I think I've only done it a handful of times, but it is extremely it's it's extremely unsettling in the best way. So I implore each and every one of you to do that. That is my homegrown dark side of the rainbow for you. And the best way to listen to Dope Smoker is really just go to
It's
just go
it's
to a
stoned.
forest. Yeah, just go to a forest, get stoned, and listen to it on some nice
Hmm.
headphones. That's the best way to do that. Lay down for like 45 minutes in the trees
Yeah.
and hope that you remember how to get home.
Yeah. Uh, I um.
That's the thing that has been different for me with stoner doom metal than any other music. That's one of it's for some reason this type of music makes me want to have an experience
Yeah.
versus I mean they're all experiences, right? But this makes me want to alter my environment when I'm listening to it versus other genres where I'm fine listening to it wherever I am doing whatever I'm doing.
Well, I think the music is also conducive to doing like to smoking weed or doing psychedelics. It the way the music is layered, it really creates these textures when you're under the influence of certain substances, that you really don't get from regular music. Uh and so I think and the lyrical content really kind of like expands your mind and your thoughts, uh and not just like the stuff they're talking about like smoking weed and stuff like that, but the a lot of the more doomier bands sing about you know pagan religion and witchcraft and that kind of thing, and
Hmm.
it's pretty interesting, and they paint pictures, they tell these stories. A good example is and we talked about Blood Ceremony on the podcast before. Blood Ceremony is one of my favorite doom metal psychedelic doom metal bands.
Go back
um
quite a while and you'll find the episode, everybody.
yeah. um but they have a song called Ballad of the Weird Sisters, which, everybody, anybody listening, just go listen to the song. It's a really good song, but it's like tells this story and paints this picture in your head. And, there's not a lot of bands that could do that. And I
Right.
think a lot of of stoner doom metal bands can do that. They tend to do that.
Yes, I get that way when I listen to Trouble.
Hmm.
Trouble takes me on a journey like that.
Yeah.
It also, I mean, it also makes you like it makes you want to move. Like it changes.
Yes.
It'll change your. It'll change. It'll make you want to change what you're doing. And I mean, I don't mean just your environment, but also, I don't know. There's just some interesting connections that it makes to the body and the mind that
Yeah.
other genres don't.
It's like groovy.
Yes.
There was I saw a meme once that was like a joke where they were talking about Black Sabbath songs and how the first 2 minutes of the song is like a funeral dirge, and then the middle 3 minutes of the song, it's like we're grooving, it's
Yeah.
but that's the truth, it's there is some kind of groove to it, and it really hits you. When we saw Person, I think you were there for that show because it was
Was that with Ghost?
yeah, when we saw Ghost at
Yes.
Webster Hall, Person
Ghost is a
opened.
fun one too, but they're not necessarily stoner or
No,
doom
I
or
wouldn't
anything.
consider them
I
stoner or
would,
doom. They're more like
I,
theatrical rock.
yeah, I would do that. I wouldn't say shock rock, but I would say theatrical rock for sure. They have
I,
vaudevillian elements.
they could be somewhat shock rock.
I think
There's definitely an influence there
I think people
from
could
shock
put them
rock.
in. Oh yeah, for sure. I think people could put them into that category,
Hmm.
but I'm not even sure what they are because they're almost just like an evil ABBA. That's really who they
Yeah,
are.
they pretty much. That's a really good descriptor for them. They're
But they,
Scooby Doo music.
yeah,
A lot of people say
they are.
evil Scooby Doo music.
I mean, they are coming in July. They're playing at
Yeah,
the Garden, so I might try to see that.
I've seen Ghost many times, so I might try to go. But if I don't, it's not a big deal because I've seen them. Oh God, how many times have I seen them? At least 4 times, but probably more. I
Wow,
can't even remember.
I've only seen them once.
I saw well, yeah. So that was the show that we saw them with Person.
Yeah.
And Person was amazing too. And it's funny because every time I've gone to a Ghost show, the opener has been amazing, and I've immediately like looked up and bought the album from the opener as
Huh,
well. Every
cool.
single time, they always bring out really good bands on tour with them.
Well, they should.
Yeah.
Actually, that reminds me, just to go back to the beginning, I hadn't real I it took me a minute, but I had interviewed 2 out of the 3 bands on the Meshuggah bill. I had interviewed Cannibal Corpse multiple times,
Oh.
and I like many years ago, and I had also interviewed Carcass a few years ago too. That
Hmm.
might have been one of the last in-person interviews that I did with a band, and before I ended up stopping that blog slash podcast that I was doing.
Yeah.
But they were all pretty fun times. It was a nice part of my life. When I interviewed Cannibal Corpse, one of the times I was in the dressing room at Irving Plaza for the Summer Slaughter tour one year, and we're just doing the interview. Um, Paul Mazurkiewicz is he's just warming up on his practice pads.
Hmm.
Alex Webster is warming up, but also kind of hanging out. And I think I was talking with the guy Pat, who is not in the band anymore.
Hmm.
I think, and George Corpse Grinder Fisher barges in through the front door. He's wearing the neck weights, and he like slams the door open, and he's pissed off, and he starts yelling, and he's just yelling. He's complaining about the food that they gave him, that they gave all the bands, because I think what he was complaining about was how while he's wearing the neck weights and his like yelling voice is the death metal voice that he uses.
Hmm.
So the he's pissing about how all the venue had for catering is boiled ham, and he's just so and how they've had nothing but boiled ham every day on this godforsaken tour.
They had
Why can't
steamed hams.
Yes, he's just he's and the other guys aren't really saying anything because they're probably sick of it by now, and he's he's just like, I just don't. They're like, you could just go, just you're in the city. You're not in the country or anything. This isn't like Atlanta or whatever. You could just go up the street and go get a slice of pizza or something. And he's
Hmm.
like, I just don't want. He like he didn't want to go get pizza because he wanted catering to just have something good. So he was just going through the definition of insanity, and he and he just could not get over it. And he's like, I'm just so fucking tired of fucking cold cuts.
I don't blame him. I'd be tired of cold cuts too.
I would too if I'm on the road for 40 days and all they have is boiled ham. Yeah, I would be pissed off too.
Yeah.
But again, the other guys in the band were just they're not poor, and they all made the same point. You're in New York City. You can literally go up the street and get anything you want.
Hmm.
You you should not be like you should not be having any trouble. If you want different cold cuts, you can even go to the supermarket across the street and just buy their cold cuts,
Yeah.
or just anything else. Literally anything else is at your disposal. The world is your oyster, and you'll be there and back again in 10 minutes. And he just he was just so angry that he couldn't think logically, and he didn't want
Hmm.
to listen to anyone. He kind of just needed people to just listen to him and I think he just wanted people to agree with him so that he could
Yeah.
calm down. But the whole scene was just so goddamn funny, and the dressing room is tiny. So there's five people and myself, and one of them is just ranting and raving like a madman with these 10-20 pound neck weights around his neck attached to a chain, and it was just a very fun scene.
Yeah.
I'm happy I got to experience that. Anyway,
That's pretty funny.
let's go back to doom metal.
Yeah. So, I don't. The genre is kind of experiencing somewhat of a renaissance. I would say there's a lot of. I feel like it's pretty timeless. I think it has more mainstream appeal than say thrash metal, because it's got that bluesy influence. So I think that's why it's more successful, and you see bands still playing that kind of thing. Um, Person unfortunately broke up. We saw them live when they played with Ghost, but I think Rosalie Cunningham, the lead singer, she still does music. She just has like a solo career now. Um, but I think she's still in the same kind of genre of psychedelic rock.
Mm-hmm.
Uh, trying to think. Oh, Blood Ceremony, I'm pretty sure still plays. I think we talked about that, but when we did the Blood Ceremony episode, um,
I believe they were still together at the time. I mean,
yeah, they still
I
are.
don't
I don't know if they're
think that they
touring
broke up.
anytime soon, but uh, they did release an album in 2023.
Oh yeah, so they're still moving.
Yeah, so
I mean,
there's
I
it's
think
still uh,
I think it comes in some odd waves. Um,
yes, it does
because
come in waves.
because first, well, first you had the metal revival around 2007, 2008 was where it started, and then it kind of went over to then it stopped somewhere in the it stopped in maybe 2000 and I want to say 2015, 2016 it started to kind of die down. There was still a lot going on, but not as much
Hmm.
because you were starting to see some punk come back again, and then there was also a lot of doom that was starting to crop up around 2014. No, a little bit earlier. I think 2013, 2014. You started to see a little bit of a doom metal resurgence,
Hmm.
and then it really started taking off around. Then you really started seeing a lot of it around 2017. I remember there were just a ton of doom metal bands that you just could not get away from, and
Yeah,
there's a death metal resurgence coming
yeah.
that I'm seeing a lot of, especially down here in New York. There's a lot of death and roll and just regular death metal coming through,
Hmm.
and you even saw a grind revival in the middle of all of this too.
Yeah,
So there's a lot going on that I don't want to give the thrash metal's return all the credit, but it kind of started there, and then
I
everything
don't want
else
to.
took off. I don't
Doom
want to
metal
say
kind of
that for sure.
Doom metal kind of came out at the same time, so I don't think it's like kind of a chicken and the egg thing. I don't think you really could say thrash was responsible for the doom metal revival. Because again, doom metal's come in waves. You know, it was big in the 70s, then you had an 80s wave, then you had a 90s wave, and now you have the 2000s wave,
So
kind of.
is doom stoner metal the most consistent of all of the metals then?
I would say
Because
it probably is. I don't.
because this has been multiple waves where the others their second wave has passed or is getting started.
Yeah, I would say it is.
Because I think the death metal stuff kind of took a turn in the 2000s to get more Swedish and melodic.
I mean, you could argue because doom and
Now you're
stoner
seeing more
metal
of the
have.
old school death metal.
Yeah. You could argue because more stoner and doom metal has more of the blues influence and classic rock influence that it never really went away. It persisted. It didn't die during the '90s when you had the grunge. Uh, you know, grunge became the main popular hard rock genre. Let's say. Doom kind of persisted through that, whereas
Oh
thrash
yeah,
and glam metal died
Yeah,
during the '90s.
Doom never stopped. It just slowed
No,
down a little bit.
I
Which
would even say it didn't. It kind of fit in with grunge because grunge really had that kind of stoner metal influence as well.
Oh yeah.
So I think Doom kind of just found its niche and just stayed there. It didn't go anywhere. It's always kind of been here, and obviously it rises and falls in popularity like any other genre. But it's never gone away completely. Whereas thrash metal, during the '90s, thrash metal pretty much died completely. Like, there might have been
Mhm.
some underground bands here and there, but even the classic thrash metal bands like Exodus and Creator changed their sound in the '90s. Exodus released a grunge album, and Creator released almost like an industrial album, kind of. So
Right. And I mean Pantera likes to a lot of people like to put Pantera into the thrash category, but I think that they were much more stoner sludgy in the two
well,
in the late.
I would call them groove metal, if anything.
Yeah.
You
Yeah,
know,
which groove could even be an offshoot of
Yeah,
stoner
it could be.
because it's just a little bit faster, but it's still the grooves are it's similar grooves that you would find in Doom.
Yeah,
It's just a bit faster.
yeah. I
I
think
And
also
also and also you see who they were touring with. A lot of the bands that they were touring with in the mid 90s to early 2000s, a lot of them were doom and stoner bands. So
yeah,
like Hypo Negative was on top of the world.
yeah.
White Zombie is considered to be a stoner metal band, and then they eventually and then when it was Rob Zombie got more mainstream, so it was just
And become more
under the
industrial, I
yeah,
would say.
yeah, which I think industrial just comes from the stoner rock, come from stoner also,
Yeah,
and Monster Magnet kind of they kind of go in between,
yeah,
but I think they're a lot more associated with the stoner rock though.
yeah. It's just it's one of those timeless genres. It's probably because it's so close to the purest form of metal in that it's very much just Black Sabbath. It's
Yeah.
heavily influenced by none of these bands would exist without Black Sabbath. That's 100% a fact. Black Sabbath is the main influence of this genre,
Yes.
as it is the main influence of most metal. But
Oh gosh, and
for
another
sure,
one.
Stoner Doom.
Yeah,
I mean, you
another
have
one that you can't ignore is Goatsnake too. Goatsnake is
yeah,
just one of the most incredible bands out there too.
but I mean, Sabbath even had basically you could say the quintessential Stoner Doom song in Sweet Leaf,
Oh yeah.
and they wrote it before anybody else. So that's that there you go. Case closed. Where Sabbath is so. And I think that's why the whole genre itself has kind of persisted this whole time, because
Mhm.
even beyond Sabbath's popularity, because after Dio left the band, Sabbath really kind of became pretty underground. No one really listens to the Tony Martin Sabbath albums. I mean, there are
No.
people that like it, but it's
They're
just
they're good albums. It's just not what you've come to expect from Sabbath.
right.
And I mean,
You know,
you also have other bands that crop up too, like Witchfinder
yeah.
General, which adds more to the
Well,
doominess,
I would say,
and Saint Vitus as well,
yeah, Saint Vitus.
which a lot of people would say are better than Black Sabbath, and a lot
Yeah,
of people, which take your pick, all of these are influencing everything.
and
Which
we
I
mentioned
know,
Pentagram before.
yes, I know with Witchfinder General, a lot of people would go to their shows wearing they'd go wearing the spike helmets to the
Hmm.
concerts, they would be like the big Witchfinder guys.
Yeah,
Just really neat stuff.
yeah. So, uh, I don't know. I forgot my train of my point. What I was trying to make.
There's also heavy use of the Devil's Triad, which is also comes
Well,
from the Black
that's
Sabbath song
blues,
Black Sabbath, which
and that's
again
blues.
also Mississippi Delta blues,
Yes.
just right there.
Yeah. Yeah, and that again, that's probably why it has remained so popular, is that blues influence, because blues is basically the basis of all popular music of the last 80 to 90 years
Yeah.
is blues. Like pretty much every genre of music from heavy metal to pop and country is due to blues. Blues is like the basis of it all.
Yes. I mean, the other thing that you'll find in stoner and doom is the mix is also very different from other genres.
Yeah.
There's it's a it's a thicker, fuller sound that you're getting,
Yeah.
and it's not muddy. There's nothing that's getting mixed.
It's almost like the wall of sound concept that Phil
Yes,
Spector had in the 60s.
yes.
It's like
There's a lot of layers to
there's a
to it.
lot of heavy reverb, a
Yes,
lot of layers, multiple guitar tracks, not just rhythm and leads. Like we're talking 4 or 5 guitar tracks. Uh heavy distorted bass, drums
Yeah.
that are super airy and kind of like heavy,
It's
very bassy drums that are like pounding, and
yeah.
cymbals that are
Very
almost in the like, sounds like you're drumming in a cathedral
yeah,
almost.
it's heavily gated reverb.
I would actually say almost the when the levee breaks by Led Zeppelin, the drum intro in that it is kind of,
Mhm.
you could kind of see the influence, how it influenced stoner doom metal, because that, and there's an interesting story behind that. They actually, this is before the time where they had a reverb built into the console, or reverb. There was no digital audio workstation. If you wanted reverb like that, you had to find a room to record in that had good acoustics. And they actually recorded the drums for that when the levee breaks in the lobby of the recording studio, because it was a
Huh,
very large room and had amazing acoustics.
wow.
Yeah. So, but I like bands that do that, that use natural reverb. They find a big ass room, or they go into like some old church somewhere and record there. Not a lot of bands have the money to do that, though. That's expensive and hard to do. But that's it's always like fun to do that, the natural reverb. And not to say that reverb that's reverb plugins or uh hardware, that reverb hardware is bad, but it's just cool when they do it naturally, with just finding a giant ass room somewhere that has like amazing acoustics and recording it.
Mm. Yeah, it's just super freaking interesting.
Yeah, it's a fun genre. It's a good genre to just zone out to, I think.
Yes.
uh and it's almost it's soothing in a way, and relaxing in a way. It's not like listening to death metal or black metal, where it's very in your face and intense. Good for like working out. Stoner doom metal is good for just like sitting on your couch. You know,
Yeah,
getting
just
stoned and
chilling
sitting on your
out.
couch.
Pretty much. I mean, that's what it was intended for.
Yeah,
It's actually nice to take a bath too.
yeah, I can see that. But
So
yeah, that's
basically, if thrash or death metal would be your workout music, this is like th- doom and
post workout
stoner would
sauna.
be. Yes, that's your exactly. That's the stuff when when you're having a schwitz in the back. That's what you want to do. That's where you go when that's what you listen to when you're at the banya.
Yeah, yeah.
Yeah, but I don't even know how I was introduced to this. I think because I yeah I want to say
Well,
that because I was pretty much only thrash and death metal for the longest time in high school, so I don't think I got into this until college when I'm sure somebody introduced me to this, or I had seen a band like this
I'll tell you,
on one of the shows. I wish I could remember, but I don't know.
my I mean, I always Sabbath has been one of my favorite bands since I was a kid. So I always had Sabbath as, big
I
introduction for
mean,
me
I
to
want to
this.
say my
But
gateway was probably Sabbath and Typo Negative, and then it just
yeah,
evolved from there.
but I'll tell you what, and I think I might have mentioned this on the Blood Ceremony episode. I don't know, or I know I've probably mentioned it before, but Last FM, uh, it was, for those who don't know, Last FM was in the early days of online music streaming. It was like really before Pandora got popular, before Spotify got popular. Last FM was the one of the best music streaming services. And I would put on, the cool thing about Last FM is that they had a like a widget that would analyze your music in your iTunes library and then create a playlist, a radio station based on what you're listening to in iTunes. And
Yeah.
so I discovered so many good bands through Last FM. Like I discovered Blood Ceremony through Last FM. I discovered Jex Thoth through Last FM. So I think that was really my introduction into like the super heavy, like distorted doom sound was and the psychedelic rock was Last FM. It really was
It
that
could
was
have
probably my
it could have been
introduction.
music choice for me also.
Yeah.
It could have either been music choice or not Uranium, because Uranium did a lot of new metal and like melodic death metal.
Yeah.
Yeah, it might have been music choice, but I don't know. I This was many years ago, and now I'm happy that I listened to this.
Yeah. Yeah, me too. I think it's one of the better metal genres out there. It's definitely probably one of the more accessible ones. Uh
I I just
just
think that the coolest thing about this is because so much of it is jamming, so much of it is
yes.
just off the cuff.
I would
Like,
say
the last band that I was in, and I'm not gonna give the name because the other person that I was in the band with, they did not want us to reveal identities or really mention the name much at all. But we did about 4 albums and I think 2 EPs, and we were planning on doing one final album. We were scoring we were just scoring um just movies and TV shows. We were just trying to score that and even conversations that we recorded with people to just talk about incidents that we were privy to at our
Mhm.
work. And well, that's really all that I could say about it. But we were scoring it, and it was this jam doom thing that was going on, and it was just a really fun time. And if you find it and you think you know what it is, then just send us an email at why does this exist show at gmail.com, and maybe we'll tell you you're right, and maybe we won't say anything. So that's a challenge for all of you out there in digital media device land. But
Yeah.
we were just jamming. Everything was a jam. Everything was on the fly. I don't remember neither of us know what we actually wrote because we weren't trying to structure it. We were just, this is what it is in the moment, in the purest way that you could do Doom, of just doing something crazy.
Mhm.
So that's probably, I think Doom is it's becoming one of my favorite genres to play.
Yeah.
I mean, also it's good because it'll warm your body. It'll warm you up too. It'll warm up your body and your arms and your hands when you're playing, so that you can start playing faster and heavier stuff. So it's good for
Mhm.
that. And on top of that, you can experiment so much more in this genre when you're playing it
Yeah.
there's because because you're holding so many notes that you could even poke around on the fretboard and really just play with your, like, you could just really play with the fretboard, and you could just do all kinds of crazy bends and phrasing and everything like that, even manipulating with your volume and tone knobs to create odd swells as you're doing stuff.
Mhm.
you know Try as many pedals as you like. There is no sound that is too weird.
Yeah.
There's less limitation when you're playing this type of music, and that's one of my favorite things about Doom, is that it's solely experimental, and
Yeah.
it can cross into other areas, but at its core, it knows what it is, and everything else. It's a life. It's pretty much the life essence of of the music that that you're playing,
Yeah.
and it goes on all these different streams, and it comes back to the mother. It's really, It's
Hmm.
really fun. That's my favorite part about Doom.
Yeah.
There's a there's a project that I've been wanting to do for the longest time, and I think, we've been trying to write the new Zamboni album here and there, and I've been sending you recordings as things come to me or as I have time to get to everything. But there's other stuff that I want to do that's in my head, and there's a project called Gorgon that I've had a few ideas for the longest time.
Hmm.
So that's probably the next thing that I want to do after I get this album, after we get the new Zamboni album out.
Yeah.
Well, the revived Zamboni, the new and improved Zamboni with the spelling Zambone, or or Zumbuni. I don't know.
Zamboni.
We're putting a bunch of umlauts on things, so who cares what the right pronunciation? You can
Yeah.
thank the green jelly episode of this podcast if you want to go way back and find out
Yeah.
why we decided to do this. And you want to listen to the epiphany on the show. But I don't have much else to really talk about Doom, but I love
No.
playing this genre. I
Yeah.
love hearing this and experiencing it, and it does something to me that other genres of music have not been able to do.
Hmm.
It's also This is also the easiest genre of music. This is the easiest type of music for me to get in the zone, and if you're a musician, you know what I'm talking about, where it just kind of opens your third eye and transports you in a way, and just all time stands still, and you're just you're just going with wherever the wind takes you on this.
Hmm.
So I hold stoner doom metal near and dear to my heart,
Yeah,
just
me
like
too.
just like all other music, but this is the one that I think has really I think experimenting with this type of music has been able to help me grow as a musician more than anything else.
Hmm.
So I appreciate that this came along and entered my life. And anybody who is a musician or is thinking about getting into music, you know, if you want to get into metal, start here and just have a lot of fun.
Hmm. I agree.
But that's all that I have to say about that. If you want to add anything, please do
No,
so. All right.
that's, I think you said it the best.
All righty. Well, then we are going to ride off into the sunset. Thank you all very much for listening to this. It has been a nice time. This has been Why Does This Exist? I've been Chris.
And I've been Rob.
And remember, question everything.
Good night, everybody.